What's up, guys? Welcome to Roensch Capital Charts. Today we're taking a look at advanced micro devices, ticker symbol AMD, on a variety of time frames in anticipation of the next trading day, Monday, February 5th. AMD on Friday finishing up 7 points on the day, 4.21%. Another big day here for AMD. Let's take a look at this again on a variety of time frames. Try to get as much context as possible heading into Monday. Well, looking at the 1 minute chart here, a couple of things I want to point out to you guys. Listen, we got this big pump off the open and fade. Okay, we're going to look at volume once we get to the 5 minute chart. Now, this upside break of volume weighted average price, we likely got some traders entering on this test. Wouldn't have surprised me at all to see an enter here with a tight stop, likely just right around or below 176, just to keep reward or risk large, right? A big R value for that pull away. I'm sure we saw some traders pull that off there on Friday. By the way, if you guys want to get scalp setup alerts, maybe even some platinum one-on-one or unusual options activity, that link in the pinned comment is where you'll find access to our Roensch Capital Gold server. Get grandfathered in, and I hope to see you join. But now we should look at volume on the 5 minute, right? Look at this. Huge volume on that green move that immediately fades on this pullback, okay? Price action aside, when you see a move in your favor on large volume, that's a good sign. That goes for whether you're a bull or a bear, by the way. And then when you see a move that goes against your bias, having the volume dump off to nearly half of what it was when it was in your favor, again, that's a good sign. Now, when we're looking at this, typically, I'm always keeping it contextual, okay? I understand that this was immediately off the open, but what's bizarre about this is we typically don't see, 5 candles into the open, 5 minute candles, still maintaining nearly the same volume as we did on the opening candle. That is really interesting here from Friday on AMD. So I'm going to pay very close attention to that as well on Monday. Okay, and then of course we saw a pretty nice intraday pump, maintaining decently into the close. And again, after hours, a small fade, but you have to take after hours with a grain of salt, whether it confirms your bias or goes against it. The reason being, volume is just too low. Okay, it's just too low to not take it with a grain of salt. Let's move on here to the 30 minute and get some context as we head into Monday as far as self-fulfilling prophecies are concerned. Now, you may be seeing in chat rooms over the weekend that, oh, this on the 30-minute chart is a huge deal. That's a golden cross on the 30-minute chart. Listen, I think the crossovers are overhyped. The reason I look at them at all is not at all because of the principle of the crossover, right? I'm looking at it because I know that the 50 period is going to move higher quicker than the 200 period, and that puts a potential safety net underneath the stock closer and faster. Okay, which is good because you can see that this 50 period, especially on Thursday, acted as a hard area of support here on the 30-minute chart. That 200-day acting as a potential resistance overnight, and then of course, ripping through on Friday. So looking at the daily chart, the 30-minute chart here on AMD, if you are a bull, you'd ideally like to see if we end up seeing a retest of this 50 period as it grinds higher, likely into Monday, that moving average. You would for sure want to see the stock hold that 50 period moving average upon a test. Okay, now if you're a bear looking at the 30-minute chart, you want to see both of these break to the downside ideally. Understand though, currently we're approximately almost 2% away from kind of the middle of that current range that exists as of Friday's after hour close. All right, let's now take a look at the 4-hour chart. You can see here that this 50 period is highly relevant as of right now. We currently are approximately 2% away from making a back test of the 50 period here on the 4-hour chart. Again, if you're a bull and we do see that occur, you of course want to see that hold. Now also, if you're a bull, you'd prefer to see 180 break to the upside because that would put us within range of that high there at 184.92. But if you're a bear looking at the 4-hour chart here, you want to see 180 reject hard. If we do see a test off of that, I think we'd likely see some bears entering short if we tested 180 and failed, since we've seen that a couple of times as of late. But ideally, as a bear, you really have your eyes set on the 4-hour at least, down at that 50 period moving average, ideally looking for a downside break of that, right? For potentially, a repeat of this earnings move, of course, without as much volatility likely. But, listen, a good thing to see here. After we got that earnings, we basically reclaimed all of what was lost in a few days, which I like to see. I'm a big fan of AMD as a company, but also simply from a psychological perspective, looking at a chart, right, which cannot be undersold. I think that's a really positive thing to see. And I think a lot of institutions, traders, maybe even algorithms would also see that as a positive thing. Okay. Let's take a look now at the most important chart, arguably, which is going to be the daily. All right. Now, listen, here on the daily, we have to look at things and actually determine, are they incredibly relevant in the very near term? The one thing that stands out to me here on the AMD Daily Chart is the high, right? I mean, we're about 4% from a test, maybe a little less, of the all-time high here on AMD. And listen, if you're a bear, you want to see that all-time high reject. You'd prefer to actually see 180 reject, not even give it a shot. But if you are a bull, get up through 180, right, and make our way up toward that all-time high. Ideally break through the all-time high, creating a new all-time high, backtest the previous, and claim it as support, ripping up out of the hole, up toward and ideally through 190. Okay, that's what I'd be looking at here moving forward. Now, implied volatility on AMD since earnings has tanked off. You've likely seen some IV crush, okay, if you have owned options during this time, but understand that the lower it goes, the more potential new options buyers have for experiencing maybe some IV pump upon a potential return back to equilibrium. Implied volatility is really, really important in determining the comfort level of a stock. And as the stock moves higher here, back to reclaim what was lost on earnings, seeing IV come down, not a bad thing at all to see. I'd actually prefer to see that, okay, from a bullish perspective, of course. Now, looking here at the options chain on AMD, 1.25 million total contracts traded on Friday. That's a good sample size. We can pull some good data out of that. Look at the overall call put ratio here. 768,000 calls, 481,000 approximately puts, leaning pretty heavily bullish. Short-term speculation, relatively undecided actually. That 0 to 20 delta, those are those short-term speculators. What are they thinking as we head into Monday? 244,000 calls, 225,000 puts, still leaning slightly to the bullish side, but a bit more undecided than that overall call put ratio, which is leaning quite a bit more bullish. Listen, before you guys head out, please leave a comment. Let me know what stocks you'd like to see me cover here on the channel in the near future, even if it is just more AMD. That feedback does help out tremendously. Appreciate you guys, and I'll see you in the next one.